You've probably heard of Midsummer, and if you have, you're likely thinking about the 2019 horror movie depicting human sacrifice, archaic rituals, and other gruesome scenes that leaves the audience more than unsettled. But you and I both know that's just a movie. So I went up north to the countryside in Hudiksvall to meet up with some of my Swedish friends to answer the question, what is Midsummer in Sweden actually like? Truth be told, I never saw the movie. And I don't regret that because my first impression when I arrived was how warm and friendly the people of Sweden are. They welcomed me into their homes, invited me to partake in their traditions, and celebrate with them the holiday that rivals Christmas in festivities. And that's what it is. Midsummer is a holiday, happening on the Friday between June 19th and June 25th. It's a reason for families and friends to gather, escape to the countryside, and enjoy the summertime. In fact, during this holiday, the cities are somewhat empty and streets bare. I'll get into history later, but for now, my first experience for the holiday included collecting wildflowers on Midsummer Eve, so on the following day we could build the flower crowns, or what they call midsummer crowns, that are worn by both men and women. Despite what it looks like, we did not do this during the day. This footage was taken around 1 a.m. Maybe you noticed you can still see things? That's because Midsummer is celebrated on or around the longest day of the year, the summer solstice. And when you're this far north, the sun barely sets. It's always light out. So, for Midsummer, we gathered for brunch and began making our crowns, which I was not very good at. I'd say my crown was 50% Bjorken flowers and 50% wire to keep the monstrosity from falling apart. We had some fika, which is very hard to translate, but can be thought of as a coffee and cake break, usually with a cinnamon roll. It's more than that though, and is another way to socialize with your friends. Afterwards, we stopped by briefly at a local gathering, which had a folk band playing, children running around, and more fika. But a more prominent feature was the maypole, a large green pole raised from the ground where traditional ring dances occur. My friends didn't have a pole, so hilariously decided to dance around a photo of one. But I heard from many of my friends in Sweden who assumed that the maypole represented, in their exact words, a dick fertilizing the ground. How poetic. Some also said it was a uterus to represent fertility. Again, I'll get into history in a second. But what does it really represent? Well, we don't really know. In reality, the symbolism of the pole has been continuously debated by folklorists, and no definitive answer has ever been found. So let's just go with penis. Later, we escaped to a friend's summer house. It was located further in the countryside as they usually are. Summer houses are, from what I've seen, quite common here in Sweden and are often passed down by generations. Dinner was held outside in the calming sun, and the traditional food usually consists of pickled herring called sill, boiled potatoes, meatballs, not from IKEA, hard bread called knäckebröd, lingonberry jam, and fresh strawberries, to name a few. Although sill is still quite divisive among even my Swedish friends, I quite enjoyed it. To answer your question, no, we did not eat surströmming, thank God. Beer and schnapps were the usual traditional drinks. And then we partied and got drunk. So that's what Midsummer's like, but why? Why is it celebrated? Why do they make flower crowns? And why do they dance around a phallic-shaped pole? The meaning of Midsummer has faded from modern times and is more so a reason to get together and celebrate. If you're American, you can compare it to Thanksgiving. But unlike Thanksgiving, Midsummer has roots to a pre-Christian era. The holiday came from Germany in the late Middle Ages, where it was a pagan holiday that welcomed summertime and the season of fertility to ensure a successful harvest. Dancing around the pole was to celebrate this season. Midsummer was considered to be a time of magic, and anything to do with nature was thought to have a special power. That's where flower crowns came from, as they were made as a way to harness nature's magic to ensure good health. The maypole was raised on May 1st in other places, hence the name. But maypoles can be found throughout history thousands of years ago in many regions across Europe, but its origin remains unknown. Christianity eventually made its way north around the 10th century. Of course, they attempted, and eventually successfully, converted the pagans in Sweden. However, the church found that rather than attempting to stamp out the pagan holiday, incorporating Midsummer and associating it with a Christian celebration would be more effective. Nowadays, Midsummer is celebrated as the feast of St. John the Baptist, whose birth was calculated to be about 6 months before Jesus, which would place it right on Midsummer. So Midsummer is technically both a pagan and a Christian holiday. But anyway, I'd say spending Midsummer in Sweden was one of the best weeks not only of my backpacking travels, but of my life, which is a bold claim, but it's true. The sun, the people, the laughs, and the traditions made for the perfect trip. And also, I wasn't sacrificed, so that was a bonus. I hope you enjoyed watching, and if you did, I also have some videos about other ancient places and traditions on my channel. I also have videos about extremely remote and beautiful places. Go ahead and check them out. Lastly, let me know what your experiences were if you've celebrated Midsummer, or if I forgot something. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.